if there's not a sense of cultural base of education, the alignment's not going to work.
The gift that we have is that it's within us, and we can truly start the healing from the inside out.
To learn, sign me up. I don't care.
What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner and 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And being part of that team since 2020, we've reached out directly and indirectly to over 400,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers around the world. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And I am very happy to be with you live on Sunday, March 9th, a little bit after 5 p.m. And what we do here is called Black Canada Talking. And Black Canada Talking is a live online conversation for good people around the world, but driven by Black Canadians. So as always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And today in Toronto, we're beginning to maybe have some hope for spring. Let me do something real quick here. There's something I don't like what's going on here. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to change up something because I don't like something here. So I want to change something up. Okay, I've changed something up. So if you're watching this live on replay, I've changed something up. If you're listening to this on replay, you don't know what's going on, so don't worry. It's all good. It's all good. As I was saying, we're beginning to get some warmer weather in Toronto after a pretty intense January and February weather-wise. We're beginning to see some hope for spring to come around the corner. Sunny today, around 7 degrees Celsius. I just came back from some time off where it was much warmer than it is here, but it's good to be back in the home studio with all of you. And I just hope that all's going good today. And as always, we have a good friend. I hope he's ready, Cesar Ndema-Moussa. Right? I don't know if he's ready yet. Oh, there he is. He is ready. Cesar, what is going on, my brother?
Hi, Dr. Vibe. Hi to all the sisters and brothers and also allies. Thanks always for having me. I'm good. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. I wish I could have you every week, but I know you have life. I wish I could have, well, first of all, you have your own life. Second of all, you have your family's life. And then you have a life of good commitment to the cause.
Thank you. Well said. Absolutely. Always.
And so we all need to make sure we put the right priorities in the right order. Put it that way. What's been going on with yourself?
Lots of work. Actually, Dr. Vibe, I owe you an apology. Yes, because Wednesday night, I came to you part of Canada, but it was so brief and quick. Let me put it to you in perspectives. By the time I passed out by 10 p.m. I am not someone who usually goes to bed before midnight, but that's how tired I was because I had left home, otherwise since Monday morning, going through agencies after agencies all the way to Toronto for the Power Up Conference on Thursday, which is about Black child welfare, Black youth in child welfare.
Okay.
And it was held at Centennial College.
Oh, my brother, that's like 15, 20 minutes drive from where I am. I would have loved to have seen you in action.
That's why I say I apologize even more because guess what happened?
What?
I literally came. I picked up a great combo at the Suya spot on Scarborough.
Okay.
Made it to the hotel, and listen, I was so tired I didn't even finish my meal. I passed out. And then the day after, of course, I wake up for the conference, and I want to try to beat the Toronto traffic. So I literally left, soon as I delivered my speech.
God, no,
Soon as I
smart,
delivered my
no,
speech and
smart. Yeah.
driving like 5 hours straight back home.
Ooh.
So,
How do you do it, man?
well, you got to rest. For one, you loving your job is a big thing.
Yeah.
Now, I also want to put it in perspective for people. Um, every job at any job has challenges. Doesn't matter if it's the janitor or the mechanic, the CEO or the president, you name it. Whether you're talking about being as a public servant or an entrepreneur or etc. etc. In my case, while there are certain considerations to have in regards to the challenges that I face in terms of my work, number one, uh, and this is very important, all couples, notably blacks, of course, face challenges. Relationships are not easy.
No.
It makes an amazing difference when you are with a partner who, one, understand the nature of your work, two, supports the nature of your work, and in my case, I met my wife in the context of my work. So she understands and she supports it. And that's why, um, you know, if I'm very frank, 80-90% of the time, our daughter is with her mother, you see?
Wow.
And for me, because notably as a regional director, I travel so much outside of Ottawa, uh, I would have never thought of it, but I thank my wife for insisting on this. When I am in town, the bedtime routine and putting our daughter to bed is very precious. It's very much a moment of bonding between me and her, from reading to her to her affirmations, notably as black and woke and proud. And
Mhm.
uh, it makes such a difference. And of course, in my case, my first career greatly involved me going from conferences to conferences, cities to cities, hotel to hotels, and I like that. Of course, when you're single without children, it's different than
Sure.
20 years later, etc. So, and then I take breaks. The en route, the en routes are my friends. I take a break. That 10-15 minutes break. Don't force it, my friend. Don't fall asleep behind the wheel. No, it's not just your life; it's the life of others. So
Sure.
I take a break and then I keep on driving. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you for that insight, because there are times I get concerned about you because you're always on the go. And
And
yeah,
And I was going to say, listeners, more than once, we've been on the phone while I was driving for a couple of
I
hours.
have no problem. That's a call unless it's an emergency. I will be more than happy to take it anytime. That's fantastic. That is really, really good. Good to hear. Good to hear. Uh, yeah, I think that before we go to break, I'll say I think there is a conversation to be had, especially in this aligns with a lot of stuff you do personally and professionally, the state of the Black family. I'm a very firm believer that how high or how low we go as a people is determined on the state of the Black family. Any disagreement there?
Well, let's put it very simply. The foundation of a strong or weak nation is upon its communities, notably when you have immigrant communities. Example, uh, uh, to use the words of our brother and hero Malcolm X, as behind me, Africa cannot be respected until the black man, black woman, and black child are not respected, and the black man, black woman, and black child cannot be respected until Africa is respected. It is that association. So you're thinking about a black nation. What is the state and how are black communities viewed? You're looking at black communities. How are black families viewed and respected? You look at black families. How are black individuals viewed and respected? It is connected. The nation, the community, the family, and the individual. This is part of what do you call that? The broken cycle.
Mhm.
Broken individuals create broken families, which create broken communities, which create broken nations. If you want to understand the state of a nation, that is broken. And I don't want to give credit to Orange Man Donald Trump, but when referring to African nations as shithole countries, of course, it's racist. But we also have to be truthful that the state of our nations is in parallel to the state of Black communities outside of the motherland, outside of the Caribbean, but also even within Afro-Canadians, Afro-Americans, Afro-Brazilian communities, because too often it is a reflection of the state of Black families and Black individuals. The exception, the few, only confirming the case for, I don't even want to say the majority, for far too many. And that is where the problem becomes. Far too many fit the stereotypes. And I'm absolutely not a Black Republican, Black conservative, or, a Black self-hating. But we have to be able to recognize that, to give an example, as we talk about the Black family, we can contrast Bill Cosby's speech regarding pulling up your pants as if, but respectability politics don't erase racism. So we can contrast that with another one of our heroes, Martin Luther King, talking about the bootstrap. It is not enough to just uplift or whatever, lace your boots or pull up your pants for racism to end. However, it is also truthful that all the efforts that we put on ourselves will only help to uplift us as a community. Perfect example, the perception that we have of the, what do you call that, Chinatowns are directly related to the perception we have of China. A strong China makes people be more respectful or fearful of Chinatown. Perfect example, New York Mayor, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, aka America's mayor, he had an informal policy of targeting and harassing Blacks and Latinos. Meanwhile, Jewish and Chinese in New York City were told by the cops to be left alone.
Stop and frisk.
Absolutely. Why stop and frisk some? Why not stop and frisk others? It is subliminal, but it's very in the subconscious, a reflection of geopolitics, but also a reflection of race and racism, and a reflection of the perception that we have of the others. And it's so insidious that we also have these reflections among one another in terms of our level of Blackness, whether coming from the motherland or from the US, etc., or light skin, dark skin, broader nose, smaller nose, etc., etc. And I'm saying this very truthfully. Just look at what happened 31 years ago, the genocide in Rwanda. They got divided by foreigners who played on created markers that eventually led to a perception of different phenotypes leading to a genocide.
All right. We're going to cut it there because we better go to break. All right. We will be back in about 30 seconds. And then we're going to get into at least 2 or 3 conversation pieces. So keep it locked. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Black Men Can Talk, a show where Black Canadians come together to have real and filtered conversations about life, culture, and community. Brothers, what is up?
A lot of kids just there just have no engagement whatsoever. They're literally just letting the days go by and they're not advancing in what they need to know.
We really don't give enough credit to how much impact our unhealed trauma has on the future generations.
I realized what we were doing had a great impact within our community.
That is Black Men Can Talk, live on Sunday evenings in a few hours from now, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Myself, Paul Osborne, and Kofi Sadat, giving lenses of Black manhood from a Black Canadian male point of view. Let's get into some stuff before we get it going. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show and on YouTube and hit the notification button. Please, if you haven't shared it out or you haven't liked, if you're up to it, share it out, like, notify, etc. Follow Dr. Vibe on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, the Dr. Vibe Show. Also, to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I'm a part of, please email me, dr.vibe@the dr.vibeshow.com. Can't forget Indie Suit TV, powered by Dr. Tachi. It's an independent content creators network, about 30 independent content creators, and been going on for almost a year now, over 23,000 YouTube subscribers. And people say, oh, that's a lot. It is a lot because only 4% of all YouTube channels that are out there have over 20,000 subscribers. Go figure. Go figure. A lot of the content you see here is repurposed on that platform. And then finally, if you want to get a hold of Cesar, his email address is president at Roots and Culture Canada. And then Facebook, Cesar Remy Emery. All right, Cesar, we are one day past it, but I think it's important because you have two ladies in your house. Let's talk about International Women's Day.
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge it just as acknowledging Black History Month, but it's even more important to remember it is not a day just as it is not a month for Black people. It is every day. It is every day that there are basically aggressions on the woman's body, on the woman's mind, on the woman's soul. Now, I am not saying this simply because I have a wife and a daughter. Something I've been saying for years in my conferences and trainings to public servants and senior leaders has always been about how, as a man, you should not wait to have a daughter to care about women's rights. This is not just coming from a man who, if I recall, was one of two men in a gender studies class in university with over 50 ladies or over 40 ladies. This is coming from a sense of social justice and the very Pan-Africanist notion, not that behind every great man there's a woman. That is a white, Western, but truly Abrahamic and Brahmic as Asian notion of gender relations. It is not African with a K. The African version is very much next to a great man is a great woman, as next to a great woman there is a great man. It is a notion of complementarity. So now we live in a world that has been so shaped by not only Abrahamic religions, but truly the patriarchal notion of male superiority over women, which we keep seeing. We keep seeing this not only in statistics in which so many men will, of course, say women have taken over. Just look at, for example, academia. And even we can talk about the fact of so many female presence in academia, how it is creating a shift from a dominance of facts and what is deemed the truth to a notion of consensus and thus equalitarian mindset. That there is still a wage gap that exists, no matter how so many men, notably brothers, will insist that hard labor work that men do. There is still an injustice in terms of very much women's justice, as so well seen with the repealing of Roe versus Wade regarding abortion rights. And I say this with respect to the fact that majority of women, but let us be specific in our intersectionality here, majority of white women voted for Donald Trump, a man whose language towards women, but also behavior and, statutory rape that he committed, or statutory sexual assault. Forgive me, I may not use the precise terms in terms of the United States, but for the rest of the world, that's a majority of white women voted for this man who is proud to have put in the Supreme Court judges who have taken away a right of body autonomy to half of women in the United States. This is quite comparable to the criticism given to Muslim extremism, such as the Taliban, and their appalling record on women. So we are in 2025, and I'm not saying there hasn't been advances, but if I may give two interesting contrasts. We are in 2025, and yet in anthropology, it is absolutely factual that the Black woman in Kemet, ancient pharaonic Egypt, Black Egypt, 3 to 4,000 years ago, had more rights than today's white Arab woman in Egypt under Muslim rule, and even more rights than the white Western Christian culture woman in the Western world. At the same time that I'm saying this, let us be honest. We are in 2025. When has America ever had a female president? When has Canada ever had truly a female prime minister? Kim Campbell was a check mark. She wasn't truly a prime minister. She was a check mark to say there's been a prime minister, aka let's save Brian Mulroney from the humiliation of the expected defeat he would have suffered. When has France ever had an actual female president? Oh yes, the UK had the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, and there's been two since. But truly, we can look around. The exception confirms the norm. Germany, Angela Merkel, the exception confirms the norm. Do we need to talk about Russia? Since when? From the Soviet to, to Boris and now Vladimir Putin? China? You got to go a couple of centuries to find a Chinese female emperor. Like many centuries, actually, because there was only one, by the way. For anyone who wonders, there was only one. But the point that I'm just trying to say is that we live in this world. We talk about humanity, but we look at the dominant ideology in humanity, which is religion. All religions are created and shaped by men in the space, time, and culture for their own interests and profits. And in all the religions, women are second-class citizens, if citizen can even be said to be the case. And now we find ourselves, notably through capitalism, where the exploitation of women is notably apparent with climate change. Women are on the front line of the suffering that comes with climate change because women are the primary caregivers of children. And whether we're talking about food, whether we're talking about shelter, I almost hate to say it, and I'm definitely not a feminist, it is a lot easier for a man to walk. And when I say walk away, let's be careful. Many men die and risk their life to better for their families, notably in the African context, dying in the Mediterranean Sea, dying in the desert, illegal immigration trying to come to the United States, to Canada in order to send money back home. Please, you will never hear me be anti-male or diminishing the plight of men. I am a man myself, and I'm not a feminist, and I have suffered including false accusations. However, let us not be hypocrites. Women are the primary victims not only of religion and patriarchy, but climate change and so many other things that are coming in this world. So when we talk about International Women's Day and we have, I can't help, but I must mention it. We have a man, arguably the most powerful man in the world, in the White House, talking about he's going to protect women's rights because he's going to remove transgender athletes from competing against women. Meanwhile, this is the same man who basically is proud to have repealed Roe versus Wade. It is an ironic and comical thing to observe, and even more comical because so many women support him. What does that say about even the internalized sexism that so many women live with and the misogyny they also perpetrate unconsciously, but sometimes quite consciously in the name of ideologies as religion or nationalism, or because they hate the other side, like wokeism as they call it nowadays. aka Black Progress. So yeah. And if I may say,
Go ahead.
March 18, I am before I forget, March 18, I'm delivering 2 conferences talks on the realities and challenges of being a girl and a woman on planet Earth in 2025. And of course, I will start out with respect to me not being a woman and not pretending that it is for me to tell a woman what it's like to be in the reality. But I don't think I need a vagina to know that there is a safety concern for a woman, whether she is deemed low in society as a street worker, aka prostitute, or high in society as a CEO or the daughter of. There is a safety concern for any woman and all women in terms of going to the parking lot the later it gets in the day. So that is a fact that's there. Just a moment. I'm on the shows as a go with Mama, please. You want to say hi? Dis bonjour.
Hi. Bonjour.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Mama,
That's
can you
okay.
get Zaza, please?
Okay.
Probably
No problem.
5:30. She has to go for her walk.
Okay.
Zaza, Sarah's calling you. Go. She likes the camera.
I know
Zaza,
she
go, go.
does. Now she's got.
Zaza, don't play there's the light. Go with Sarah, please. Please, because I'm on a show and I'm gonna come get you after. Go, Mama is calling you. Go. Please go. Go. Thank you, Sarah. Go. Thank you, Sarah. Close the door, please.
Yeah, no problem. I just one more question before we move on to your favorite president. How do you feel because we're right above the United States, how do you feel about the social political climate in the US and how it's affecting women? You mentioned briefly how a number of women voted for 47. What, with these tumultuous times, what impact, good or not good, do you feel is having for women?
When you talk about impact, one of the first will be a growing polarization, if it was ever needed, actually, in terms of how, in terms of 2 presidential elections, majority of white women having voted for Donald Trump and over 90% of Black women having voted against Donald Trump, it will impact so-called friendships. It will impact a so-called perception of allyship, notably in terms of how we have to be careful. Not all white women support Donald Trump. Actually, many don't. But even for themselves, there has to be a reflection of how do I belong to an identity that so much supports someone who perpetrates hate in the claim of caring for the nation, but truly white supremacy, patriarchy, aka making America great again, aka let's go back to the 1920s. I used to say 1950s. I'm coming more and more to the conviction it's the 1920s that he's trying to go back to. So it will also affect Black women as we saw after the Obama presidency, then the Trump presidency. It will impact more Black women in becoming more, I don't want to say radicalized because that's not the term, more conscious of politics and notably to become more involved. When we look at some of the non-white women in the U.S. Congress, aka the Squad, and even others such as Representative, I'm forgetting her first name, I apologize, Crockett.
Jasmine Crockett.
Jasmine Crockett, there you go. These are the results of the Trump presidency, but also of an Obama-inspired notion that you Black and you're a woman, that intersectionality of race and gender, how can you not get involved? How can you not have an opinion, but even better, a factual word on the issues of the day that directly impact you. When I say directly impact you, Black women, Donald Trump's state of support to police, umbrella support to police, aka even they're talking about with JD Vance pardoning Derek Chauvin. Aren't Black women the mothers of Black children? Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, George Floyd. These are the mothers of these men that I'm talking about here. And I didn't even mention Sandra Bland and so many other Black women whose name are too often not mentioned, aka hashtag say her name. So Black women, beyond the conversation on economics and inflation, the price of eggs and gas, ultimately, like I was saying, Black women's bodies, mind, and soul, they are the mothers of the members of this community that become the targets like practice shooting of white supremacy on steroids. Let's be fair when we say that. It's been worse to be Black in the US, just as in Canada decades ago. We go back 60, 70 years ago. As I've said before, Africans were not welcome to Canada. Caribbeans were not welcome to Canada, nor to the United States. But this is the situation in which we are in. This white lash will impact Black women in the body, mind, and soul, as they are the mothers of the community. They are the mothers of the Black nation. And it's not enough to simply think it's just an election or to even choose not to vote. It becomes truly a matter of life and death, because those policies, and when I say policies and laws, I'm not just talking at the federal level of presidential election. I'm talking about the city. I'm talking about who is your mayor, who are you councilors, who is on the school board. They will have a direct impact on the quality of life of your children, on the potential future. You want a perfect example? I live in a neighborhood where I don't have to worry or wonder if garbage will be picked up. Meanwhile, we know there are too many neighborhoods in which people are not sure if garbage will be picked up this week or the next week. So let's be honest about this conversation. International Women's Day is not just a matter of March 8th or even International Women's Month about the month of March. No. Just as white history is every day on TV, every month on TV, channel, you will find something about White History Month. Not a day goes by without a documentary on World War II, World War I, or some war between the royals, or some political situation, etc., etc., where all the actors and main actors are white, and you really have to dig in or have a certain mind to look at the Black narrative, a Black aspect of it. So white history is on every day, every month. It is for us to be sitting at the intersectionality of race and gender, to show support not only to women, but especially to our Black women who, even as we talk about women, I gave a perfect example. There is white feminism, and there is, I'm forgetting the proper term. There's white feminism, and there's, yes, intersectional feminism. Because even in feminism, just as in the LGBTQ movement, and pretty much in everything, there is racism. There is racism. The realities of being a Black president, aka Obama, was not the same as the rest of the other president, aka he was still referred by the N-word. So let us just imagine beyond Kamala Harris, what it could be like to be a Black woman president. Will there ever be one? Is America ready for one? Tell Obama 2028, 2032? Maybe. But that's not the reality right now. The reality right now is a man who had the comments on the Access Hollywood tape. Is a man who basically committed statutory sexual assault or sexual rape is a man who basically is proud to have removed Roe versus Wade while claiming to support to protect women because he's attacking phenomenon of transgender athletes, a minority of a minority of a minority. LGBTQ are a minority in society. Trans are a minority among LGBTQ. Trans athletes, just as trans will have transition and having children, are a minority of a minority. And this is what this man claims to protect women about when he has done all of this. And I'm not even talking about his private life of X amount of cheating on his wives, X number of children, by X number of women, aka if this was a black man, he would never be president. We all know that. So women also have to do a reflection on their own regarding this very day,
All right.
regarding this very month.
No problem. And forgot to shout out earlier, the Walamala is in the house, so I didn't get your comment, but happy Sunday. Thank you so much for joining in. And thanks. I hope you're still here with the conversation. Let's move to our next conversation topic. 47's tariffs and geopolitics. Where do you want to go with this one, Cesar?
Well, let's put it this way. More and more Trump's voters are starting to realize the price of the vote. They're starting to realize that, Mr. I will bring down the price of eggs and stop inflation on day one, himself has admitted that, I didn't exactly mean it like that. So when we are here talking about tariffs and looking in terms of Canada, and like I said yesterday with the U.S. ladies about how Trump wanted to even increase 250% tariff on Canadian dairy. It is how do you call that? I can't remember if it was Forbes magazine or Wall Street Journal, the stupidest economic war. As Justin Trudeau put it, Donald, you are very intelligent, but this is very dumb. Justin Trudeau was trying to sugarcoat it to Donald Trump, of course. We have to look at the impact of these tariffs in terms of how, although it is only the beginning, it is causing harm to the U.S. Harm to the U.S. because the Make America Great Again to living a century later, 2025, on a planet where even notably him talks about colonizing Mars in the next 4 years. Something unlikely to happen, as Elon Musk, back in 2011, if I recall, talked about colonization of Mars to begin 10 years later, 2021. And yet, here we are. Elon Musk satellites falling off the orbit. So Mars. But the tariffs and the geopolitical impacts in a multipolar world in which we live in terms of Canada, a growing outlook that we need to diversify our partners and rely less on the USA. It will be hard. It will be Ford threatening with the electricity, not only an increase in terms of tariffs on electricity to millions of Americans, but even talks of shutting it off completely. Let's take a look at not only the growing Canadian nationalism, patriotism, I should call it, also growing in Mexico in retaliation, just as in Europe becoming more. Yes, we can criticize the European Union and European nations having taken full advantage of American military protection, but becoming more accountable to the fact that this Trump's administration, this current American administration, is to be relied upon less and less. Of course, it also comes with a danger when you look at the place of the world in terms of countries such as Taiwan. I'm not sure that Taiwan will still be independent in 4 years the way things are going. And I'm neither Chinese, Taiwanese, nor Asian. But in this planet, which is a global village, we cannot deny the fact that what happens to the left has consequences to the right. And ultimately, in this volatile geopolitical situation, I can't help but think about the African cake, aka the mineral resources in Africa, notably preyed upon by the powerful nations. Meanwhile, African nations, no matter how we can talk about deals or no deals, remain very vulnerable. What would prevent Donald Trump to, hey, let's say Gabon, they may have whatever minerals or resources that we deem we seem to need. Let us send an American aircraft and a couple of GIs there to occupy that nation. What are the neighbor African nations going to do? I can't help but think about it, notably as people in Sudan are dying carelessly, and there won't be a topic, of concern. But what if, it's so volatile, like electrons moving wildly. It can start a spark. It can start something. Yes, it could be a revolution, but it could be more armed conflicts.
So just for people who are watching live, if you're watching on the Dr. Vibe Show YouTube channel, we're running a live poll, and the question is, do you agree with 47's tariffs and geopolitics? You have a choice of yes, no, or not sure. Right now, no one is agreeing. The people who are responding are saying they do not agree with his tariffs and geopolitics policy. And it'll be very interesting, Cesar. Do you feel with the state of, especially the relation between Canada and the US right now, you never say never, but has the loving gone for a long while? Is this going to be a hard one to repair back up?
No, 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 no. And I will give you a very good example here. With my daughter, I visited my parents a couple of hours ago. As my mother talked about going to Costco, the thought came to me about it's Canada, we ought to boycott American, but how do you boycott Costco, but then you go to Walmart? you know, we are here. Oh, let's not go to watch this American movie in the cinema. We're gonna stay home and Netflix and chill. Netflix. No, the relationship is quite deep, and again, it is quite deep because there's been a lack of Canadian cultural independence. There's been a lack of Canadian industrial independence. There's been a lack of Canadian military independence. This is why. I've always used an expression saying Canada is America's little brother. Can disagree on something, it's hard to disagree that that person is your brother. So it's been convenient for America to have a vassal nation as Canada to its border, helps to make it safer, creates a buffer from Russia and, with the two C's, as Zelensky was saying in the White House in the ambush meeting by J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, America having two oceans on both sides, and then Canada to the north and Mexico to the south. The application of the Monroe Doctrine works very well with vassal subservient nations, because that's what it is. As unpleasant as it sounds, that's what it is. So it is not so much that it cannot be healed and broken, but the relationship has to change. The relationship has to change. It has to change in a way. So let me give a wild example here. GM, Ford, etc. Why is it that we have the factories don't have the Canadian, at least one Canadian car brand, Canadian made and owned? Why then? Why don't are we a G7 nation? Why don't we? Why can't we? Japan has their own brand. China has their own brand.
Yeah.
Germany has their own brand. The UK has their own brand. Italy has their own brand. France has their own brand. America has their own brand. The only G7 nation to not have its own brand of cars is
Canada.
Canada. The maple or the beaver car, no, So this kind of tells you, and it has been so because of some laziness. Some laziness. I mean, if we talk about military, at the end of World War II, Canada was deemed to have the fourth army in the world, which it let go of and poured those resources regarding a social welfare, which notably giving us universal healthcare. That's all great and good. But ultimately, you cannot claim to be an independent nation but truly rely on another nation to protect your borders. This is not an attack or a jab at the Canadian Army, obviously not. But I don't think there's any Canadian who can be such a hypocrite to think that another country can attack Canada and the USA is not going to do anything. Not so much to protect Canada, but to protect itself. Now, with Donald Trump right now, who knows? But this has been too far the logic of Canada, and thus notably explaining why, for those who don't know, Canada has a history of wasting millions, I don't want to say billions, wasting millions and millions on used second-hand, if not third-hand, submarines and other military equipment that end up serving to nothing. Yet Canada is a mining superpower in the world. The means are there, the will is not. We know far too well as a G7 country that we can produce our own content that can rival with what America does. But on the culture scene, Canada prefers to be a land of cheaper production, thus American productions coming to Toronto, coming to Montreal. You see what I mean? That's how close the relationship was. But with Donald Trump, as much as we can criticize what he's doing, it reveals the toxic nature of dependency in which Canada was in. A perfect example is, why is it that it took Donald Trump to bring very much to the surface the challenges and barriers regarding interprovincial trade? It's ridiculous. Suddenly, Quebecers and Ontarians are realizing, oh my God, we could do more business together. We are neighbors. Instead of doing business with the neighbor that's another country, aka USA. Dr. Vibe, this is very similar to what happens in Central Africa. You literally have all these African countries, Central, Western, Southern, and Eastern Africa, that literally are sharing borders, who are the same skin color, but most of the trade is done with Europe or Asia, or trying to do business with America instead of one another. Like, let me do trick or treat Halloween for my children by driving them to the other side of town, as if I don't have neighbors here who are also doing trick or treat. It's closer, it's safer. You see what I mean? So the relationship will survive, but these 4 years, I mean, and that is if Trump does not stay past these 4 years under whatever claim to succeed. As I've said before, and not to be as I read, it's not my sole credit here. The situation will hurt now. The groceries cart is more expensive than ever. But in the long term, Trump will do more bad to America and more good to the world. It is unfortunate, but this is the price of democracy when you end up having millions of brainwashed people who didn't care about Trump's racist, sexist language and still voted for him. And now many of them are realizing that voting for Trump doesn't save you from being chainsaw cut by Elon Musk and his musketeers. So I don't have sympathy for the Trump voters, nor for those who didn't go vote, because they are accomplices in what is happening now, and as they will feel that impact.
Well, it'll be very interesting. And we talked yesterday. Cesar was a special guest on Prime Time with Aisha and Lala. And there seems to be some disruption right now in the 47 cabinet, especially between Elon Musk and Marco Rubio, and another, I think also the transportation minister. So it's going to be very interesting. And one of the commentators made a very interesting statement saying that Republicans know how to get elected, but they don't know how to govern.
Yeah, look, let me put it to you in perspective, Dr. Vibe. I've said it before on your show. There is a political concept about how and why Kansas, overwhelmingly a white state, keeps voting Republicans, although Republicans, when in power, which is pretty much always, don't vote laws and policies that are good for the average and poor Kansas white person. These town hall meetings where Republicans voters have been running away from, that's also been happening in Kansas. So until the Republican Party can literally pull themselves by the bootstraps, until they basically dare to grow a spine to stand up to Donald Trump, the man who has collected so many impeachments, so many, what do you call that? The cases that he had, I can't remember if it was 94 or
lawsuits. Yep.
He's like, until the Republicans, Congress and Senate, to stand up to him, the Republican Party and the USA will suffer the consequences of bringing back to power a man who has quite unusually been honest about coming on a campaign of retribution, but also fear and control, aka white supremacy. And I'm so glad I just remembered to mention this. We are in 2025, meaning a little bit more than 100 years ago, 1917, if I'm correct. Donald Drumpf, Drumpf, grandfather came to America, an immigrant who did not speak English. A little bit more than a century ago.
All right. Don't want to keep Cesar for too much longer because I know the boss of the house will probably be coming in momentarily. But as we speak right now,
yes,
Canada is getting a new prime minister. The Canadian Federal Liberal Party race is ending. And while we were on live, Justin Trudeau gave his last speech as Prime Minister of Canada. They are saying we're at 5:02 or 6:02 Eastern time in Canada right now. And they're saying probably by around 6:30, probably a little bit after this conversation finishes, Canada will have a new Liberal leader, and then they will have a new new prime minister. Just interesting. And I'll let Cesar comment, though, of the nearly 400,000 Liberals who are registered to participate in this election, the party says only 151,899 votes were cast. So with that background, any thoughts about the leadership race, and also any a remembrance of Justin Trudeau? And what the future holds for this country and that party?
There's nothing special that I'm going to say in thinking that Mark Carney would be the likely winner, the AKA the next federal liberal boss, chief, leader, and thus interim prime minister until the next federal elections. Chrystia Freeland, former finance minister and former vice prime minister, was too linked to Justin Trudeau on one side, but on the other side, she betrayed Justin Trudeau. And generally speaking, there is this expression in history. I can't remember. It might be coming from Julius Caesar, aka I love treason, but I hate traitors. And unfortunately, this is where Chrystia Freeland may find herself to be, because her unexpected resignation was the coup de grace to forcing him himself to resign. So when we look at the situation right now, it becomes problematic also for a certain Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party, because truthfully, Mr. Poilievre, who I do consider him an intelligent man. This is not the question, and he's definitely eloquent. For all that blue is my favorite color, Mr. Poilievre of the Conservative Party, aka the color is for the American viewers, blue is the color of the conservative in Canada, red is the color of the liberals in Canada. But Mr. Poilievre has been a career politician since age 26, compared to Mr. Carney, who has been a professional, notably in finances, aka Bank of England, Bank of Canada, for many years. So, for many people, I am absolutely not saying that Mr. Carney would win the federal elections, but clearly, one has more experience in terms of the crisis that Canada is facing regarding dealing with tariffs from Trump, but also dealing with Donald Trump as president, when for too long, Pierre Poilievre pretty much identified as Trump of the North, for all that he says that he's not MAGA, and Trump says he's not MAGA. But as I said and repeated it, Donald Trump, January 6, 2021, supporting the insurrectionists. Pierre Poilievre, February 2022, supporting the Freedom Truckers. Freedom, D-U-M-B, by the way, because if they were not white men, we know very well what their fate would have been, just as January 6th, if they were not white men, we know too well what the fate would have been. So the similarities, notably in terms of conservative, are too striking along race and politics. So the impact that I also see here is in terms of Trudeau. Well, something that I will mention regarding Pierre Trudeau is how, sorry, I said Pierre Trudeau, the father, Justin Trudeau. Back in 2009, the deceased king of my tribe, of the Sawa people, came to Montreal. And my father, as a noble of our tribe, sat at the table of the king. But the king also met a promising Canadian politician named Justin Trudeau, son of the former greatly revered prime minister. So I do remember Justin Trudeau from those early days in politics. At the same time, in terms of his legacy, coming after Harper, many years of Harper, and Harper was kind of going xenophobic as well as Islamophobic in order to try to stay in power in 2015. Justin Trudeau represented a hope of change, but also a return to the liberal and a more welcoming Canada, kind of like what's happening right now with the United States, which is I don't want to say going into the dark, but going into a less glamorous age, Trudeau represented the hope of change, which I will not claim it has necessarily failed, but from the scandal of SNC Lavalin and the ladies that ended up basically kicked out of the Liberal caucus and the consequences that it had, but also Matter, aka George Floyd protests in 2020. I am on record clearly saying that I did not support him taking a knee. Taking a knee. No, 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 no. It's the policies and the proper management of policies, politics, and laws for the advancement of Black people that is needed. When we look at that, one of the things we have to accept, the Liberal government did give monies for Black people, but it was grossly mismanaged. The trickle down to the average Black person, and I'm saying trickle down, didn't really occur. Black lives have not been improved because of the millions that the Trudeau government gave to the Black community, because it really went to few Black organizations and individuals. And at the same time, concretely, what has been the change? Little to none. In the same way as in saying this, yes, it's great to have recognized the decades for people of African descent. Absolutely great. Next month, I will be at the United Nations headquarters in New York as a Canadian delegate addressing the fate of Black peoples in Canada. But truly, for the average Black man, woman, child, and senior, Justin Trudeau has not improved their lives. He hasn't had that. He hasn't had that impact. There are those who did benefit and who are notably worried about a conservative back to power. But for those like us at Roots and Culture Canada, me and CEO Ketcha Peters, it doesn't matter who's in government. We serve the cause of our people and we serve social justice. But for many, the funding, aka salaries, truly came because it was Trudeau and the Liberals in power. Let us dare to have those uncomfortable but truthful conversations. Because right now there are people who are nervous as accountability is being sought and they might risk notably legal consequences from the management of funding money. But again, for the average Black man and woman, youth and senior, it has had no impact to them. They didn't see the dividends of Trudeau putting his knee down, acknowledging the decades for people of African descent, or celebrating Black History Month, such as at the Canadian Museum of History/Civilization. I'm not here to really to address how Trudeau could have done better regarding blackface or brown face or wearing an Indian outfit when in India. No. But in the long run of things, it may surprise people. I believe he will have a more positive judgment from history than many would think right now. And I'm saying this because when Mulroney left politics, just as Jean Chrétien after him, just as Pierre-Éliott Trudeau before him, when they left politics, politics, the hardest part is to get to power. The second challenge is to keep power and then to maintain it. When they left, it's pretty much because they're forced to leave. They're at the bottom in the statistics. Give it a few years, maybe even decades. When people look back, hindsight 2020, start to think it wasn't so bad. Now, many will criticize Trudeau for feeling that he was woke, aka he leaned too much on liberal policies, just as he contributed to the issues regarding the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. But still, I think in the long run, Canadians in history will judge him more positively than right now.
Well, by the time we're alive next, we'll have a new prime minister, and certainly we can see the forecasting. A lot of reports had before Prime Minister Trudeau announced his resignation in the polls. The Liberals were over 20 points behind the Conservatives. Now they're saying it's a neck and neck race, and some polls out there saying that, the Liberals may pull this off. Interesting observation too. Going into this election, I think it's one of the few times in Canadian political history there's at least commonality that 47 in America, they're all against that. So there's going to be some commonality. One last point I want to ask you, Cesar. Say all the stuff came down with 47 and Trudeau was still prime minister. Would he still win? Would he open an election against Poilievre?
If all this was going down,
say Justin Trudeau didn't resign and 45 doing all the stuff he is doing right now, would Justin Trudeau still have a chance of winning an election?
I don't think so. But
Okay.
the reason I don't think so is because, and this is actually a continuation of what I was saying, that Canadians in history will have a better look at Trudeau. Since Trump has come to power January 20th in thunderous fashion with the signing of executive orders and I'm going to impose 25% tariffs, Justin Trudeau has been pretty remarkable in his adjustment. I mean, some people will make a mockery of the fact that he was a drama teacher, so maybe it's a knack. But no, he has done a remarkable adjustment in terms of speech, in terms of showing energy in addressing and tackling the situation called enemy at the gates, aka Donald Trump. But if he was still there, the residual, it's less anti-liberal but more anti-Trudeau sentiment would have been too strong in terms of the association of the party with his name and face. You have to take a step back to give an opportunity to someone else to shine. And when I say this, just look at Chrystia Freeland. If she can't shine within the own party, she's not likely to shine in the country itself. I'm saying this not knowing whether Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland has won. And I'm saying this without any disrespect to the other two candidates, but these were the two front runners. However, what we have here is that Pierre Poilievre is less disliked in terms of Canada than the threat of Donald Trump. But Trudeau having been here in power for what would be today his 10th year, there is a certain erosion of power, a certain erosion, a need for change, especially in a federal system in which the very nature of alliances and majority can shift so much. Trudeau was able to avoid elections since the last federal campaign, I believe 2022, if I'm correct, because of his alliance with the NDP of Jagmeet Singh. What will happen if the results are close? What will happen? Because if the results are so close that the Conservative win, but with a minority, it might be a minority that is useless, because if the Liberals get enough vote and the NDP get enough vote, and then you get not the Green, but the Bloc Québécois, it becomes quite an interesting situation in Canadian politics, with the fact that all are united regarding Donald Trump and his politics towards Canada. But still, are we having a new liberal leader heading towards federal elections for new federal elections to happen right after? Because the situation becomes unmanageable. I absolutely don't suspect that whoever would have won, including if it was Trudeau, that it could have led to a conservative majority. But to answer your question, I don't think Trudeau could have won if he had stayed despite the anti-Trump rhetoric. The combination of him leaving and Trump as a threat has greatly helped the liberals to climb back in the charts, just as, and number three, very important, the constant association and reminders of Pierre Poilievre with Donald Trump / MAGA. Even though he denies it, but that's exactly what it comes off like. Conservative in the US, aka Republicans, conservative in Canada. So yeah.
Yeah, well, all his commercials in the past, and he said he was really aligned, and there's a lot of things that he can't deny. So he's caught. He's caught.
There you go. There
He's
you go.
caught.
So
He's caught.
and in many ways, it's a bit hard to blame him. In 2016, forget 2016. We just need to go back last year. What would have thought that Canada and the USA would be in an economic trade war? Basically, USA is in an economic trade war against Canada, Mexico, China, the European Union.
The whole world. The whole world.
Exactly. Nobody saw that coming last year, but this is the reality that we live in.
100%. Well, as always, Cesar, I want to say thank you for taking the time. That we have one or two comments here. Michelle Baptiste has a comment.
Hello, Michelle.
Her comment en français.
Thank you for your enlightening commentary, Cesar. Merci, Michelle. Thank you.
Very nice. Very nice. And as always, good to see you here, the food plane. Thank you so much to have you here. And then also, Michelle says, all is good, thanks. So good to have you as always. Want to say thank you to Cesar for taking the time out of his positive, productive schedule to hang out. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And again, if you want to get in touch with Cesar, his email address is president@Roots and Culture Canada. Also, you can get a hold of him on Facebook at Cesar Remy Emery. Anything we need to know that's coming up other than you coming into Scarborough and leaving Scarborough quick? Anything else before we let you go?
Work and finding out in a few minutes who the next liberal leader is. But truly, I would encourage our viewers to pay attention to what's happening in Africa. For the 3 African countries of the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, that are showing a pathway for true African independence, whether it be in agriculture and industry, or military decisions, or even something as simple, Dr. Vibe, as the interdiction of African lawyers and judges to be wearing the European-style wigs in court. We are in 2025. People understand, in 40 degrees Sahel region of Africa, you had African lawyers and judges, aka the elite educated of society, who were literally in 40 degrees weather wearing these alienating wigs. So when I criticize wigs for our sisters not to wear them, trying to look like white women, the elite of too many African countries, peacocks, are wearing these 18th century, 17th century white wigs to show intellect, to show authority. It's pathetic. In the Sahel region, notably Burkina Faso, they have said enough is enough. No more of that.
All right. As always, my friend, to you and your family, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And if you're not making money, make history, and you're doing both, and also make it better, which you always do. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always. Be well.
Thank you.
All right, that is it for another episode today of Black Canada Talking. And before we call it, subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms I'm a part of, please feel free to email me dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. As always, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. So, actually, I forgot. You can get a hold of me, at the drvibeshow.com, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, the Dr. Vibe Show, Instagram at the Dr. Vibe Show, X/Twitter at drvibeshow.com. And again, email address dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. You can watch replays of this epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and on the website, the drvibeshow.com. Now I'm done. So live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions. Then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And if you're not making money, make history. Try to do both and make it better. Be well and keep the faith. Peace.
Just take a quick moment.
Yeah.
You just introduce yourself. Let Dr. Vibe welcome you into the show. As I
Oh.
told you, Dr. Vibe.
No. I welcome. I'm really good to have you here. I didn't want to. You were on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt. You were on a roll, but
In an world created by whites, dominated by whites, run by whites. And you're a billionaire, bro. FYI, I don't. It's probably the first time of the year that I use the word bro.
yes, it is. That's the first time, as long as I've known you, you used it.
My daughter would laugh.
But for many people, the economy ain't great. There we go. I saw that.